There we go. Okay. We are also going to do one other thing out of the ordinary. We're not going to start with the meditation. We're going to share something with you first, and then the meditation is going to flow from that.
Right, very quickly. Okay? It won't take long.
So we came up with an acronym for Labor Day. Okay, this is our acronym for Labor Day. Living abundantly beyond ordinary routines, doing awesome yoga-ing. Anybody want to guess who came up with the word?
You have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
I'm going to put you on mute because we're hearing way too much right now from your phone. Okay, so I just have you on mute right now because we're going to be talking about the meditation. So hopefully you can hear, but I just wanted you to know I did that so we wouldn't be interrupted by the phone. Okay, so living abundantly beyond ordinary routines, doing awesome yoga-ing. Who do y'all think came up with the word yoga-ing? Bill. Okay. So we wanted to define it. It is union with our divine nature through meditation, exercise, and breathing, which brings inner peace and abundance.
Balance.
I'm sorry, and balance.
That too.
That too. We'll take them all, right? And the beyond ordinary routines is the phrase we really want you to start thinking about. What does that mean to you? And how does it relate? And awesome yoga-ing, what would that look like for you? Okay, so we wanted you to have this picture in your mind as we do our meditation. And in fact, maybe I'll just leave it up there while we're doing the meditation in case anybody opens their eyes and wants to focus on that picture, but you know, just meditation itself. But Matt, we're going to talk about it, but first we want to use it as our dive in into the meditation. Sound good?
Yep.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we are going to invite Jeffrey to bring us in and invite everybody to get ready for the meditation that goes with this amazing acronym.
Don't hear it.
Y'all remember when we were on before we started recording how we all practiced it and everyone could hear it, right? Y'all, those who were here, thumbs up. Remember you heard his drum? Oh, so we just invite you now to close your outer eyes and relax into this meditational moment. Take that nice breath as you close those eyes and go into that wonderful domain of the divine.
And as you take a deep in breath and release it, follow it up with a long sigh of contentment.
So we're going to start by assuring you of a timeless, transcendental, higher consciousness Labor Day fact, something we just shared.
Living abundantly beyond ordinary routines by doing awesome yoga-ing means establishing conscious union with your divine nature through meditation, exercise, and breathing that bring inner peace and balance and abundance.
So reflecting on that, just take a nice deep breath and let it out slowly. Anticipate what it really means to establish conscious union with your divine nature.
So listen once again to what the higher essence of Labor Day represents, spiritually interpreted.
Are you ready? Labor Day represents living abundantly beyond ordinary routines by doing awesome yogaing. It means establishing conscious union with your divine nature through meditation, exercise, and breathing that brings inner peace and abundance. Let that sink in.
So don't hesitate to tune into the possibilities of manifesting what you want out of life. Look forward to being able to materialize your heartfelt desires through yogic union with your higher spiritual nature.
Take a moment now and picture being able to magically summon all forms of the abundance you want from the field of infinite potential. The life you want materializes when you adopt yogaing as your chief spiritual practice.
You will consistently move beyond ordinary, sometimes laborious, oftentimes time-consuming routines by upping your consciousness to an elevated conscious awareness of your oneness, your yogic wanting with your innate divine nature, which is an individualized life force of the one reality actualizing as you in your current human form.
Take just a moment to absorb that universal truth. Allow that level of transcendental awareness to fully sink into your belief system. We're going to repeat that universal truth again. Reflect on this again. You will consistently move beyond ordinary, sometimes laborious, oftentimes time-consuming routines by upping your consciousness to an elevated conscious awareness of your oneness, your yogic wanting with your innate divine nature, which is an individualized life force of the one reality actualizing as you in human form.
How does that resonate with the inner core of your beingness? How does that change the way you look at Labor Day, its new interpretation, which is an everyday occurrence when you think about it? Here's why this interpretation of the traditional non-yogic Labor Day helps to accelerate your greater good. When you elevate your consciousness to a super sentient level of awareness, you're always divinely ordering your human experience.
Take another slow in-breath and slowly release it as that truth permeates your consciousness. Most people have been taught differently about the Labor Day celebration because traditionally it reflects the achievements of the American workforce. And that's perfectly okay. Dedicated workers need to be recognized for their contributions.
Our intent this morning is to add a higher consciousness dimension to the ordinariness of a national holiday by also celebrating its supersentient vibration as well. Why? Because higher consciousness rhythms and universal cadences underwrite ordinary consciousness and ordinary activities as well.
Your higher consciousness frequencies have an effect on your physiology, emotionality, psychology, biology, and neurology. When all of these effects are in sync, yogic Zen is found. Because you're in total alignment with your soul signature, and your greater good is assured since you've eliminated any and all laborious resistance.
You'll always have constant access to living abundantly beyond ordinary routines by doing awesome yoga.
Because you're a highly conscious spiritual being who's divinely ordering your Labor Day experience. And so it is. We invite you to breathe and bring yourself back to share with each other during this wonderful time we have together. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
All right. So, some of you I muted, so you'll need to unmute when you want to talk. Appreciate you doing that so we could do the recording okay. What are your thoughts coming from the meditation and the acronym of Labor Day?
I thought it was very helpful, having to do with my previous understanding, which may be inaccurate, of what Labor Day was for. I thought that Labor Day was a break from our labors to do just what your meditation talked about.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool.
Well, what I like about what you just said, Kay, is that labors interpreted means misalignment with your divine nature from a different perspective. So breaking from the misalignment is what quote unquote Labor Day could be all about.
Yeah, bringing it back.
That's just a different perspective.
Yeah. We had that, what Labor Day, how it was originated, and I don't have it right in front of me. So I was thinking it was a self.
I'm very familiar with that, Cher. Do you want me to share about it?
Yes.
Please.
In 1894.
She is so all this stuff. It's amazing.
Well, I'm from Chicago, and that's where it originated. In 1894, George Pullman insisted that workers work longer hours and was not increasing their pay. This is where they built the Pullman railroad cars on what's now the very far south side of Chicago. And so the workers informally struck, and it got to be a really big thing. And because they were building the railroad cars, the passenger cars that people traveled in, the sleeping cars and so on, and everybody used rail transportation, it became a political issue really fast because it was interfering with nationwide transportation. And so, as part of settling the strike, Congress passed a law providing for Labor Day. So that was part of the settlement.
Huh.
Okay.
So did it acknowledge it's become a day to acknowledge people, the American worker?
Yes,
That's kind of how it's evolved, but yeah. Okay.
correct. And those were, normally like blue collar workers is what I usually think of.
Interesting. I don't think I even knew that original beginning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
You're welcome.
what she said, y'all.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's become a day of big sales and barbecues is kind of what it's become.
And nothing wrong with that.
Which is fine and great. And there's, like Bill said, there's nothing wrong with it, but we wanted to look at it from a spiritual perspective. So thanks, Kay, for bringing that awareness. Yeah. What else thoughts came as you focused on the meditation?
One thing that just reflecting on my own experience became really clear to me, that when I'm in the right state of alignment, what would seem to be a very difficult task is very easy. When I'm in a really crappy state of alignment, even a really simple thing feels like a Herculean effort.
Wow.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. That's a great awareness. And I see heads shaking because I think we all have experienced that. Yeah. So it pays to take that time, even though we say, I don't have time to get aligned or meditate or do whatever the practice is. It really pays off to do it because it transforms the way the work becomes. Awesome.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
Other thoughts? Okay, we'd like you to keep that acronym in your mind and ask yourself the question, what does that mean? What ordinary routines do I have that I could live abundantly beyond those routines? It's questioning the way we do things. And we would even go as far as to say the way in which you do your meditation practice, because even that can turn into a laborious routine if you're not careful. Sort of like you do it so often that it no longer brings you the meaning, and it becomes, oh, I've got to do that meditation. I've got to fit it in. And so asking yourself, how can I shift that? How can I do it differently? And then be aware of what your yoga-ing looks like. What does yoga-ing look like for you? And begin to just ask yourself, what breathing exercises do I have? How do I relax? How do I meditate so that I can bring myself to that form of alignment? And how can I keep doing it differently?
You're all probably visualizing the yoga position. And that's fine, because that goes along with the physical aspects of yoga, of course. But we're talking about more than that, obviously. What yoga means emotionally and physically and spiritually and neurologically. And it's just a complete body massage, a complete consciousness lifting at the whole practice. And there are many forms of yoga.
We're stretching it here to just include, all the things you do to help you physically take that action to move yourself to that higher level of awareness.
Yeah, the universal definition for yoga per se is union. And we need to ask ourselves, what does union look like for us? Union with what? And that's an important question for all of us to answer from our own perspective.
Well, one of the things that I find in relating to this, yoga is a not a bad word for me. It's just a word that I don't recognize because I don't understand you. I mean, I understand the concept of it, but I don't do yoga and everything like that. But using it in this format, right? What I find is when I walk at least 3 to 5 days a week at the RV park, where I'm at. It's a really beautiful place to walk. And what I'm noticing now is I'm noticing more, and I always notice my surroundings because it's in nature, but I'm noticing more of my surroundings. the early morning birds. Sometimes, it's different every morning, because sometimes if it's a cloudy morning, they won't come out early, like 7 o'clock, say 6:30, 7 o'clock. But other times they will. In the clouds, it could be a sunny day and it's calm, and all you'll hear is a crow or a hawk. But I'm aware more of that now than ever before. I'm always conscious of it, but a conscious awareness of it. And my feet, how my feet feel on the earth as I'm walking, feeling the earth more now than ever before. And I think this was part of what what you're trying to, ask. And that's part of what I'm recognizing. Plus, I used to look forward to Labor Day like all right, it's a long weekend. We get a 3-day weekend and we get to do. And because when I worked a lot of hours a week and everything. So it was nice to have that extra day. And on Labor Day, for the most part, most of my life, I did not do anything other than a cookout or something like that. I did no labor.
Right. Yeah, I always said it's the most misnamed holiday of
Yeah.
because no, we do not, unless you work in car sales or stores.
Right.
That's the biggest,
Well, the Buddhists believe, as you know, one of the Four Noble Truths is that life is suffering. Sharon and I like to think of life as laborious, if we allow it. A little bit different take on suffering. Nothing wrong with the Buddhist concept, of course, because in a way, when you are misaligned with your higher divine nature, there is a lot of suffering and difficulty involved with that relationship. And once you reestablish the alignment, as David was referring to earlier, things go a lot better, a lot more calm, a lot more peaceful, a lot more. There's an opportunity, folks, to become more sentient. Cosmologists are just now beginning to realize a concept called panpsychism, that everything has some level of sentience, some level of self-awareness, subjective consciousness, whatever. There's no universal definition for consciousness either. So the scientific world, the spiritual world is just now really beginning to take serious what we mean by consciousness. And at some point, we may arrive at a definition of consciousness, but I'm not sure. One of the things I was thinking is that at the point where we can establish a definition for consciousness that we can put on the front of a t-shirt, we've discovered it. We're trying to be too complicated. It's probably so simple. And anyway, that's just my perspective. But at some point in time, we will understand the different vibrations and frequencies associated with increased sentience. Most people are living and breathing at a very low level of sentience, a very low level of small s self-awareness, let alone capital S self-awareness. And at some point, humankind will outgrow the small level, small vibrational sentience, and not so much completely outgrow that, because you'll need some level of that in skin school and physicality, but to begin to move into upper vibrations of thought, we need a thought triage, perhaps. And at some point, humankind will get there. We're not there yet, obviously, as we look at what's going on in the world today. But there are those of us, and Sharon and I are looking at them, that's you guys, who have already graduated far beyond the lower levels of sentience. And we recognize that, and we're privileged to be associated with folks like you who are getting it. And in the process of getting more of it, it's going to help. It's like yoga with the body movements. For those of you who do yoga, the body movements really are a complete body massage and a body, emotion, mind massage when you think about it, which is the importance of yoga. And like Jeffrey was talking about, walking, movement itself helps in that.
And I want to tap into that also, just your awareness. That's such a powerful knowing, to begin to be aware of things that other people just take for granted and don't even notice. Like other people could walk down that same path you were describing and they don't hear the birds, they don't see what's there. They're just chugging along and doing whatever. And I think that sometimes driving, when we did our work in Greensboro, I remember in the fall, it was so beautiful. It was an hour drive to get to that spiritual community where we worked. And that drive was so beautiful because the trees were all changing and the colors. And I looked around at all these cars going by and I said to Bill, I wonder how many people aren't even noticing this. Yeah, they're just driving right by. They're missing something so beautiful. So that's moving beyond ordinary routines and becoming more fully present in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, something else was more beautiful on our drive to Greensboro too, because when we saw a state trooper having someone else stop, I slowed down just a little bit, recognizing that we were in danger.
Richard, yes, save us.
Jeffrey, I agree. I do that quite a bit, sitting in my own backyard and looking out at the trees and the birds. And what it means to me is it's bringing me back to simplicity. It's just that simple essence of, you can almost close your eyes and be part of the universe in meditation. It's just flowing simply, even watching the ants on the ground, or just every little aspect. It's just, I just go back to the word simplicity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I honestly, I think just observing is part of our divine purpose here. Like, I think that's part of why the earth made people to walk on it, is to enjoy all that it's made. So.
Yeah,
True.
definitely. And we miss it. We get so caught up in the busyness of what we're doing that we miss the simplicity of what we can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Jeffrey and Richard and also Cher were talking about, I like to think of this, the going out in nature and being present and seeing things. And thank you, Jeffrey. I noticed hawks much more ever since the last time when you brought that to our awareness, and the birds. And so we're talking about the visual, but there's also the smells of the forest or
Yes.
whatever's around us. And, the sounds, so you've got the visual and the sound, but if we use all of our senses from a joyful state, so if we're centering ourselves at the start of our day to experience everything, to go back to the Van Gogh experience, that's what it did for us, using the color, which is my preferred way of expansion, which is why I do art, because it puts me in that meditative state of seeing beauty, light, edges, shadow. You have a more technicolor 3D experience of the world. And I think of that as simply the transcendent human experience, whether it's Labor Day or every day, is really still going back to that same concept. It's being in the now, or as you like to call it, being present. And I don't care what your to-do list has, if you can take that to it, you have joy even in those routines.
Yes, definitely. Wow. Jean.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you were talking about meditation and changing up your meditation, and I've talked with you about this, Cher, where I've just been doing the same meditation for so long and kind of just zone out. I fall asleep a lot. And you recommended that I start, or I try Steve Halpern's Chakra Suite. And it's been an amazing experience for me. I had just a brief inkling of not only hearing the music and listening to the music, but actually feeling like I was the music. And that was just phenomenal. So, changing what you do in meditation can make a huge difference in your experience with oneness. And at least it has for me. And as far as changing my routines, I think that I've just been more aware. I don't know if all of you know this, but I'm a therapist, so I see a lot of clients. And now that we're doing it virtually, I'm sitting near my piano. And so instead of just waiting for my next client to show up, if they're late or if they don't show or whatever, I just go to my piano and I start playing the piano. And that is just also another way for me to change where I am.
Awesome. That's a great feedback in terms of how just making those little shifts and getting out of our head of what, quote, meditation has to be.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm just thinking with the comment that Richard just made. Now, was that to all of us or?
Yeah, that was to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
As y'all saw that, our true divine nature is observing with all of our senses. And of course, what's interesting is neuroscientists are telling us that our main senses, we have 26 to 30 main senses, not just the 5. And that's what we've discovered so far. There are a lot more senses than that. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of people, as we speak, researching extrasensory perception. And if you include all of those, it's a couple hundred senses there. So, we're talking 300 senses kind of thing, which are major senses because we're using bits and pieces of all of those every day. There may be some that are used more than others, but really, when you think about it, if you really look at it, we're using all of them to some degree. And the reason that's the case is it goes back to what you guys have just brought up about our connection with nature. Cosmologists now and quantum physicists are suggesting that there is a twinship between the cosmos and consciousness. And so if that is the case, and I really believe they're right, particularly if you believe in panpsychism, sentience, you recognize that, there is a fraternal twinship at the least between cosmos and consciousness, because we are the cosmos and the cosmos is us.
I just want to back up just for a second here on what I was saying about being aware, like when I walk in the country. It's funny, I shared with Sally the other day a little story about my daughter when she was going to college in Boston. Now, she grew up in the country in Lakeville, south of Boston. She had 2 girlfriends that would come out on weekends with her and spend time in the country. They were city girls, okay? And their biggest thing was it was too quiet at night for them to sleep. What it did, and I've shared this with people, is being aware of your surroundings. If that's your environment and that's where you've grown up, that's what you're used to, there's plenty of beauty in the cities. And from the country, when I go to the city, I can only stay for so long. And I need to get back out to the country. And for the closeness of the buildings, I think is what bothers, is what is hard for me to accept. But there is so much beauty there by looking around. And walking into one of those curio shops or walking into a museum or any place that's in the city. And so I want to just make sure that it's not just walking in nature, but that's because that's in nature. Basically, if you want, if you look at it with a wide view, it is nature. It's just a different configuration.
Absolutely. And there's something to observe and take in no matter where you are.
And I apologize for interrupting someone that was going to speak.
That's okay. Yeah. Julia Ann, was it you?
Yeah, I was
It was me.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Well, I just looked up the word sentience, and I was shocked to find that it was coined in the 1630s. And as of 2021, we still don't have a definition for consciousness.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, it's been, 3 centuries, 4 centuries. But I feel like, as Bill said, that this group has helped me grow so much in that. And the other day I got in my car and my radio was on, and I was looking up at the sky and going, I don't need any music here. Look at look at the clouds, look at the trees, look at the crepe myrtles in bloom and all that kind of stuff. And it was I just don't turn it on anymore.
Yeah.
It's interesting
Yeah.
because sometimes we use that because our thoughts are so cluttered, but as we become more focused, then that becomes the place we want to be, and we don't want to have that interrupted.
It was just rote. It was just like, like you said, the routine that I was so used to. And and I really like driving a lot more too, as long as I'm by myself.
Right. Yes. You
Not
rose
if my husband's in the car.
routines. Exactly. Thank you. Julia Ann, because we kind of
Well, when Bill was talking about the cosmos and consciousness, one of the concepts I connect to for God of my understanding, for Gomu, is universal mind with a capital U and a capital M. So I have this sense, I don't even know how to describe this. Sometimes I feel it acutely, most of the time not. But just like it's all of our minds, like our higher selves all together somehow. And then it also feeds into the field of infinite potential, because you can pull anything from that mind that you need.
Yeah.
It's always there. And since we're talking about our senses and unusual senses, the phone rang this morning and I knew who it was before I went to the phone.
that's one of the
I just knew.
yeah, that's an
Yes.
extrasensory one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
you
cool.
mentioned, Julianne, you mentioned about mind, global mind. If you guys have a little bit of time this holiday weekend, it'll take as long as you want it to take, of course. But look up global mind. Google global mind or global brain, and you'll find a lot of interesting thoughts out there, a lot of research out there about that. And it's based on the concept of, guess what? The cloud. And the cloud's expanding.
Is
And-
that the same as like universal consciousness
Yes,
theory? Okay.
most definitely. And there are companies out there already harnessing, quote unquote, the information load that it takes for this quote unquote global brain, global mind. And it's going to be part of our reality where we connect our mind, our brain with this quote unquote global mind. It's like connecting our computer now to the cloud. It may very well be commonplace, and they're talking 10, 15 years from now.
Mhm. It's like an internet of the brain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very much so.
definitely.
Yeah.
So that's a really good
Yeah.
lead
Segue.
in or segue into what we wanted to share from a parable. And this is a parable that you all may or may not be familiar with, because it's not one that's talked about a lot, but it has a really powerful MetaSpiritual interpretation that we felt fit perfectly into Labor Day. So it's the parable of the workers in the vineyard.
And forgive us, we're going to use the B word for this, Bible word, B word.
But only shortly, yes.
Yeah.
Because we want you to hear the parable, just so for those who may not know it, because a lot of people just aren't familiar with this particular parable. Although, Jesus told it and it's in the Matthew, but it's just not used a lot. And yet we think it's really powerful. When I'm going to share it very quickly with you from the New International Version, because it's a little easier to understand than the King James. And well, in this case, it is. I read them both. I like King James too, Julianne. But it was a little tougher. But the reason we want to share it is because taken literally, it just has all kinds of problems.
It's fraught with negative.
And people could get really upset and get into a big discussion. So we don't want to go there. What we want to do is just share it and start thinking, because we want to share with you. We don't just want to share our interpretation. We're going to break it down and show you how we did this, because we want you to be getting used to MetaSpiritually interpreting anything. It doesn't have to be scripture. It could be a movie. It could be anything.
Newspaper, whatever.
Yeah.
Magazine.
But what you're going to be listening for are key words, key people, key events that happen. And then we're going to share our perception of that. We'll do that first, and then kind of go into a big discussion about what it means to you, because there are a lot of ways it could be interpreted.
Yes.
This is ours. Okay. It's only one. We
It's-
want to make that clear.
Right. It's as you know, it's our BS.
Yeah. Right. And what's interesting is, Bill did the MetaSpiritual interpretation of all four gospels, and where he verse by verse, he interpreted them. Well, he did Matthew in 2007. When we decided to do this, we went there first, and we have not completely, but we've done a lot. He's going like, did I write that? So we've changed it. So we're not even going to go there. We're going to share our perception now from our new way of thinking in 2021. And if we do this again in 2 or 3 years, it'll probably be different again.
Somewhat, anyway.
But here's the basic story. And what Jesus is doing, as he always did, he would be talking to a group of people, and he would relate it to something that they understand or know. Like, so in this case, we're thinking he's probably walking somewhere near a vineyard. And so he'll just take what's there and use it as an example. So he said, the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. So the landowner is going out to hire workers.
Now, if I was writing that again, Jeffrey, I would say that the landowner owner was out on his skateboard in the vineyard.
Checking out the people who were there. Okay. And what he agreed to pay them was a denarius, which was the fair wage labor for the day at the time. That's what that stands for. I mean, that's the literal interpretation of a denarius for the day. So the fair wage for the day, and he sent them into the vineyard. So these guys went to the vineyard. About 9 a.m, he went out again, and he saw other people standing in the marketplace doing nothing. So he said to them, well, you go and work in my vineyard, and I'll pay you whatever is right. So they went. And then he went out again about noon and around 3 and did the same thing. So he kept bringing people in throughout the day and getting more people to work in his vineyard. About 5 p.m, he went out again and still found people standing around. And he said, why have you been standing here all day doing nothing? And they said, well, no one's hired us. And he said, well, go work in my vineyard. Well, okay, so now evening comes. The owner of the vineyard says to his foreman, call all the workers, pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first. Well, the workers who were hired about 5 p.m. came, and they each received a denarius. Remember, the fair day's wage. So when those who were hired first came, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. And when they did, they started to grumble. I mean, you can imagine they were a little ticked off. And they said, this isn't right. Those who were hired last worked only an hour, and you made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. And the landowner said, well, I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave to you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my money? Or are you envious because I'm generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. Thus endeth the reading of Matthew. Okay. So we could get into a big discussion about that, but we'd rather not. We'd rather focus on the MetaSpiritual, but you can see where the problems are, right? I mean, if we'd been the ones hired early in the morning, we'd probably be ticked off too to get the same pay. And, then when you deal with literal, the problem is people have to justify. So then people are saying things like, well, those last ones were probably higher skilled because they needed higher skilled workers for that last hour or work.
Yeah.
All that stuff. So doing it literally, Jesus never even meant it to be taken literally. So now we're going to dive in and look at what it means MetaSpiritually. And hopefully you jotted down some of the key people that you heard and some of the key things. And we're going to give you the approach we use where we take each of those things first and look at what could it represent where. Where does MetaSpiritual go when you're interpreting? Where do you think about? Within, right?
Oh,
We want to go within ourselves. So it's not stuff happening out there. It's a metaphor for what's happening within us.
And what's interesting, as you just discovered, with most of the literalist translations of religious work, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads or the Christian Bible, the Muslim Torah, Quran, etc., Jewish. Most of the literalist translations then, because of the way they're written and the message they're trying to give, just like the one we just heard, are generally fraught with negativity and negative implications, which get people upset and then get people trying to justify, like the landowner did, for the decisions he made. So we're not going there. We get that. That's what happens. We like to think that our metaspiritual interpretation, metaphysical interpretations, the outcome is more positive. And you'll see that as all of us begin to discuss then what this could mean on a higher spiritual level. For example, the kingdom of God that mentioned, the God word, is really the absoluteness, if you will, and beingness of this ultimate reality, this higher consciousness that we can't define quite yet. And it refers to our conscious awareness of our innate divinity. That's the quote unquote kingdom of God in a more metaspiritual sense. It's like connecting with our soul signature that you've heard us talk about before.
So the vineyard is one of the big things there, of course. That's the place where it all happened. And we believe the vineyard represents the domain of the divine, the domain of well-organized truth principles of which we're invited to partake, so we can enjoy the fruits of adding to our spiritual knowledge. So we're looking at the vineyard as the ground of well-being where we get our divine ideas and are able to use them.
Yeah. The laborers stand for our lower consciousness, thoughts, intentions, and beliefs. That's why it's so laborious, because we're operating at a very low level of sentient awareness. So the laborers stand for our lower, more materialistic thoughts, intentions, and beliefs.
And the landowner represents our divine nature or our soul signature. Okay, so the landowner who kind of oversaw that is our soul signature.
What's interesting is that as Sharon and I interpreted the daily wage and what that means more spiritually, it represents the blessings we receive when we follow divine guidance. The payment is the same for everyone in that regard because it comes in the form of divine ideas and inner peace and radiant health and confidence. That's a pretty decent wage when you agree for everyone.
So when you look at the whole story, it describes how divine order works. We just see this whole parable as a reflection of how divine order works. Mind, idea, expression is one way you can look at it. So when we practice the presence or come into the vineyard, we become one with our divine nature at every level of our being. And we're encouraged to persevere instead of just being lukewarm. So in other words, it doesn't matter when we come in. Our goal is to focus on those divine ideas and look at how we can then use each divine idea as it builds on the other to create the whole.
What's interesting about the last being first and the first being last, that whole scenario, literally it has problems as you've just discovered. If I worked all day for this wage and the person works an hour and gets the same wage, might get upset with that. Well, from a metaspiritual interpretation, it's referring to the ideation process. And for those of you who are in psychology and neuroscience, the ideation process we've discovered is that the usable ideas, the most usable ideas usually come last in the brainstorming process. So the first ideas have become the catalyst, which bring us the ahas. So the reward, of course, is the same from that standpoint when you look at ideation and not quote unquote wages paid.
So essentially this, from a metaspiritual perspective, what this parable is saying kind of in a nutshell is to follow the invitation of your super sentient thoughts and insights to harvest your divine ideas according to divine order, no matter when they come, morning, noon, or night, and then rest in the assurance that you will manifest what you desire.
And as we've amended the greatest affirmation in the world, you want to share with them that just to remember.
Yes, and we put this in the Monday musings, but our greatest affirmation, I'm looking over here because I have it posted on, on our desk. I divinely order my greater good by right of consciousness and by using my inborn ability to materialize the essence of what I desire by applying universal prosperity principles. So that's essentially what this parable is telling us we can do.
And it's by right of consciousness and right action.
Oh, right, that's not in there.
Because
we changed it and I didn't write it in up here.
Because
I changed it on the Monday musings.
Because by right of consciousness, yeah, we can have everything we want in consciousness. But in skin school, we can't have everything we want, but we can get there a lot more times than not if we have this in syncness, if you will, or alignment with our divine nature. But we're going to have to take action. Like Myrtle Fillmore says, meditation is wonderful, but you've got to get off your well.
She said you got to move your feet. I think she said.
She could have said that, but it probably edited it out.
So that's just kind of a quick run through, but what we wanted to do is get your ideas and thoughts on it too. Tesseract, I see your hand.
Oh, I know Julianne had her hand up too, but question real quick on what did the workers represent again? I missed it when I was writing my notes.
Oh, the laborers, they represent our lower level thoughts.
Yeah, our lower material thoughts, the biases,
our human nature, system, our human nature,
our unenlightened
human nature. Yeah.
Ego with a little e.
Ego with a little e, which is why they got upset when they felt if they weren't treated fairly. And how often does our unenlightened ego do that to us? We start taking offense at things people say, or we take things personally, and we allow that to overwhelm us to the point that we don't get to appreciate and value and enjoy all the things that are right here for us. Yeah. Julianne, were you going to say something too?
Well, this discussion reminds me of a saying we have in AA that we tell especially newcomers. And the saying is, live your way to right thinking. Mm-hmm. And what it means is that, our consciousness is very subtle, and it's very difficult to directly change, if not impossible, to directly change your thought process with self-will. And so what we tell newcomers is live your way, meaning if you change your actions that you're doing on a daily basis to be actions that are representative of a healthier, saner, higher place in consciousness, if you will. If you change your actions, then your thoughts will automatically get changed as a consequence.
Yeah, right.
That's interesting, because I used to past life was a human resource manager. And I remember one of the credos we lived by was you can't legislate the thoughts and attitudes, but you can legislate actions. And so we can require people to act a certain way. We can't force them to believe it. We can't force them to think it, but we can say, this is how you're going to act. So that it kind of ties in with that, because if you've acted enough, then maybe hopefully the experience then affects your way of thinking and doing and being.
Well, and I can say I've seen thousands of examples of that being very, very true.
Absolutely. Yeah. Other thoughts on the parable, and we're very open to other kinds of interpretations. Yes, David.
This is going to be formulated as I speak because it's a new concept for me.
Cool.
The last shall be first, the first shall be last, the sense of intrinsic injustice in they've been working so hard all day and they just get the same reward. Well, maybe it's saying the kingdom of heaven, we're really placing too much emphasis on the whole notion of time. That if time really does not exist, if time is an illusion, then the last is the first is the last, there is no difference. And he's saying, if you're in the kingdom of heaven, it is a space of timelessness and nowlessness, and how long you've been there doesn't matter because it doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
And that's a clue as to what the kingdom of heaven actually is in terms of how it's experienced.
Yeah. Good point.
Very.
I
It's
love it.
really cool. And Jesus was known to say, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end.
Yeah. And just remember, he got that phrase from the Babylonians.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true. And we say that all the time, like time is an illusion, but what does that really mean? And this gives some insight into what it does mean. And it gives a whole new meaning to patience and what that means in this skin school experience. What, that we get so tied to timing, and maybe sometimes we need to let that go and just be available. Like the laborers, they had to be there in the marketplace to get hired, to have the opportunity to be in the vineyard. So we have to be there in presence to be ready for it.
And the other thing that goes with this is I so often have the experience when I'm meditating or when I come back to consciousness, it's like, okay, I'm here now, and this now could have been a year ago that I have a fleeting memory of exactly the same thing, and it's all the same space.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, and I'm here now. Well, this was the same me a year ago, but it's just now.
Yeah, that's pretty weird too, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
One of the things I try to do is replace the word time with segment, a segment of my life, because then it doesn't restrict us so much as to exactly when, and we can overlook a lot of things. At least I can overlook this segment of my life. The last few days, I've had the pleasure of joining Sally at a beautiful lake house, and now I'm up here in Crozet for a couple of days, and I go home. I go back to my place later on today. This segment of my life has been great. Before and after will be great, but it's segments of our lives, and some segments are better than others. And instead of using time, I think it's one of the things when that was introduced to me about using the word segment. Time puts this stigma on life, I think. But that's just my thought.
Oh, I totally agree with you there. I had a mentor who always said seasons. Everything happened in seasons.
Yes.
Same kind of idea. Yeah, it gives you a perspective.
Yeah, Richard.
If I'm correct, Bill, I think humans, or this human existence, we're the only sentient beings on Earth or this dimension that thinks and talks about time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'm going to just add a proviso, as far as we know.
Yeah.
Right.
As soon as we get the definition of consciousness, we'll get it figured out. Yeah.
Like, I know bees communicate a lot of distance stuff. I don't know how time works into that though.
Yeah, I was just thinking a lot of animals, and even nature has a time frame, but season or
Right.
get into. So there is an unfolding process, but you don't see the stress about time that humans have.
No one checking their watches? No.
And Jeffrey, the segments that you mentioned earlier, one of the segments is the skin school experience each of us are experiencing right now in our incarnation. Each incarnation is a segment when you think about it.
Oh,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
So again, it's that whole.
We got many lifetimes.
How do we narrow things down?
Yeah, many segments.
Renee.
I have a question. David's concept here. Can you apply that to, God, I don't know if anybody has ever had this happen to them, but you wake up and you think it's Saturday, but it really is Sunday?
No, none of us have ever experienced that.
You also say, my God, the time is just going by so fast. I want to know where it went. What did I get done today? And then days, it's, oh my God, will this day ever end? Is that part of what you're talking about, David? Because I think we're all experiencing that. I mean, some days go very quickly for me, and I feel either I did good today or not, and then other days, and I can't pinpoint why. But I just feel like this is a slow day. Let's go to bed and wake up when it's over.
Let's see
is that what you're talking
Oh, heck, if you're asking my opinion, if I had a handle on what the total subjective experience of time is, I'd be a rich man and I'd be someplace else talking on the circuit. That's a biggie. I really don't know how that flies. The one thing that's occurring to me is the difference between if I'm focusing on how one thing is changing into another, then I'm in time. If I'm focusing on the awareness that is persistent throughout anything I'm experiencing, then I'm in the kingdom of heaven.
Mm.
And so if I'm, this is next, and Kay knows I'm there most of the time anyhow. What do we do now, honey? What do we do now? Well, what's next? What, you know, then I'm out there. But then there's the place in me, and I can be aware that's what's changeless in me in the midst of all the changes.
Nice.
And wherever I live sort of depends on what my consciousness is, and what my consciousness is depends on what place I inhabit. Because you can be in the state of changelessness and still be doing things, and changes are occurring in the environment as a result of what I'm quote doing, but nothing feels like it's changing when I'm doing it. It's all okay. Just some thoughts.
What I love, that's like our concept of rise above. Like it's kind of like, and we've used this a couple times in our one-on-ones, so some of you have heard this, but it's kind of like the super highway system where there's all these different levels of highway. And if you got up on a higher one, you can look down and see all the traffic below. Mm-hmm. You're from a different perspective. You're still part of the traffic, mm-hmm. but you're at a higher level of it. And I think that's kind of what you're saying is I'm in life, I've got things I have to do, but if I can rise above the daily stress of the pressure of all the cynicism, I still know it's there, but I rise above it. So I can operate from a higher level. That's kind of where we want to be.
That there's an absolute changelessness in the midst of change.
Yes. Yeah, because you're there. You're in the domain of the divine. You're connected there.
Yeah.
And I also find, you're talking about time and this timelessness. I find that the idea of when you transcend time, it's similar to when you transcend separateness. Mm-hmm. When you just stop focusing on being this human personality, this body, or this person with this to-do list, this house, this, what are people going to think if I don't wash my hair today person, So transcending time and transcending me both get you to that same expansive place.
Yeah.
Going back to something that Richard just reminded us of, when you talk about sentience in time, when you think about it, the fly on our wall, what is time to the fly versus time to us? What is time to a subatomic particle that can travel at the speed of light? And what is time to a neutrino and a quark that can travel faster than the speed of light? And is there time, as we talked about before? Time is truly relative. We don't know what time is. Was there a before time? So, that's where we are trying to figure that out. As we mentioned earlier, what Nancy was saying about there continues to be no universal definition of consciousness either. But we're getting there, and there's a certain segment of humankind, generally scientists, people like us who are engaged in spirituality, that try to figure that out and how we can use it here. Matter is frozen light, some people say. When you think about it, it's the speed of light frozen to a very low vibration, which appears to be material. And as you know about our own bodies, they say we're carbon-based, but most of our bodies are air.
I thought they were what?
And not matter at all.
I thought our bodies was mostly water.
That's what we've been taught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was taught.
No,
But it's air.
no,
Is it
Well,
hot air?
but even water is mostly empty space.
mostly empty
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
And it's oxygen. It's also a gas.
Yeah, 2 parts oxygen, 1 part air.
Right.
What flew through my head when Jeffrey was talking about segment was, just coming home from my mom's 95th birthday celebration and people asking me how it went. And I'd say, oh, it was a great segment.
We had a great segment there.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
We now changed our languaging.
You're welcome.
Yet again.
I can jump on board with you, Bill, and make up, have new words to go
Yep.
by.
Yeah, that's fun.
Another new word.
And there are people who think that there is nothingness. And when you think about it, there isn't really nothingness. There's a somethingness in the nothing. There's not really a true vacuum in the cosmos. And if you take an empty glass, we say empty glass, but the glass isn't empty because there are all kinds of subatomic particles there in the space. And when we pour a liquid into it, it just simply takes the place of those subatomic particles. It just sort of pushes them out to fill it with the quote unquote water. But as David just reminded us, even the water or the wine or the beer is a lot of empty space in it anyway.
Same way with solid foods like cake.
Solid food,
That's one of the things they say on Master Be airy, it needs to be light.
Yeah, what we're talking about is the structure of atoms. That's largely empty space, Yeah. So
Probably give us a whole lesson on that.
The molecules, yeah.
I have a lot of atoms in my head. Does that count? I mean, I have a lot of space.
Well, now, are you saying that men have atoms in the head and women have Eves in the head? Is that?
Or Liliths, either way.
We thought we could get through 2 hours with you without one of those, but no.
So share, that means that cake that you eat is low-cal because there's a lot of air in it, right?
Aha, there you go.
I embrace that idea.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm still trying to figure out if I have enough thought going into the fact that these things do not have calories that affect me. I can go ahead and eat them. Oh, well. Julia Ann.
Well, first to respond immediately to the cake with the air, delusion and illusion are not helpful in the spiritual world.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
yes.
So true.
Yeah.
I wanna go back to your to the parable we're talking about and talk about a section in a different way, and that is the one about the last shall be first and the first shall be last. When I changed from running after all material values and started to understand that I was a spiritual being, that's the last became first. What happened is that's what happened to my value system.
Ah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that had not been important to me,
Good.
prayer,
Mhm.
meditation, spiritual connection, all those things were at the bottom of my list. I never paid any attention to them. All of them became first. And the stuff that had been first, like how much money am I making? And, how big of a house can I buy? And is my car better than the neighbor's car? And blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the whole material world thing, all that went to the bottom of the list. I mean, that's just not important.
That's a great insight. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. Yeah. Because
I really do appreciate that, because I came from the Catholic tradition where, God is punishment and all that sort of crap. And that was always interpreted as, well, if you put yourself to the head of the line, well, God's going to stomp on you and to kick you to the back end, And so the only way to sort of be, to get anywhere in life is to sort of make yourself last, and then God's going to recognize you and make you be good. And so to recognize that it really represents the way that our values get reordered as we do this process. Thank you for that. I hadn't seen that.
I have not thought about that either. And that is a really cool way to look at last shall be first, because we do have and I bet everyone here can recognize some segment in your life where you flip, your values really shifted and what became really important. And when you make that important, That's when you start seeing the results. That's when you get that.
And imagine what shape the human species would be in if loving kindness and respect and forgiveness would come first.
Yes.
Transformative.
Sure would be.
Well, and maybe, Bill, again, maybe the parable is also prophetic, that when the kingdom of heaven is incarnated on earth, then what has been last, as you say, will be first, and that will be what's lived.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they'll have to have bake sales to get money for wars.
By the way, what chapter and verse in Matthew is this?
That is Matthew 20.
21 through 15.
1 through 16, I think.
Or 16.
Yeah, one or the other.
Matthew 21?
20.
No, 20.
Okay.
Matthew 20, 1 through 16.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to go read it in the King James.
Yeah, you'll see why I chose NIV for a group reading. Sometimes group readings from King James just do not get it, unless it's Christmas.
Yes.
Christmas story, I don't want to hear it any other way. That is the routine that is kind of one that sticks. Renee.
I don't want to get off course here, but I long time ago, we were taught or learned that we are related to everything. I'm related to my couch, I'm related to the table, my desk, everything, because they're made out of the same substance that we were made out of. And I want to know if it's time, the concept of time, that keeps the desk being a desk and me being me. Is that a time difference? You don't understand my question.
I'm thinking
that I.
Well, I'm just thinking it's more the energy level of things and how fast the atoms hold together. I'm not sure I support the initial premise the way it's stated.
The way
that we're related, because so many things are man-made, so more the wholeness of the material, maybe.
But the idea of time determines what something is in sequence in our world, in our physical world of skin school.
Yeah, that's only where time counts, I'm thinking. And the higher consciousness has no time.
Yeah, I think we're like, when we're in 3D space, we've signed up to experience life in time. But when we're not in skin school, then we can kind of play with time a little bit more freely, if that makes sense.
Well, Renee, the biochemical materials that everything is made of, including us, are the same. I mean, Gaia, Mother Earth, all the chemistry associated with nature is us, as Carl Sagan's remind us. We even have a lot of the materials in the universe, but it's a different shape. That's all.
Right.
Well, that's what I was trying to
Vibrationally,
think of, vibration levels
and frequency levels and amounts, of course. Most of our human bodies, I think neuroscientists remind us that we're filled up with a lot more bacteria and viruses than we are actually what is resident to us, if you will. The human body is about half human. When you think about it, all the other materials in it are out in the cosmos, and it's part of our makeup, but it's interesting how it's formed as us. And a lot more materials out there in the cosmos, if you will, out in quote unquote outer space that haven't gotten to us yet. When they do, they'll be part of us too, of our biochemistry, our bioverse. So that's an interesting study too, to get involved in terms of what we're made of and what furniture in the chair we're sitting in.
Yeah, Bill, it's like we've been colonized.
True.
with microbes and viruses and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
There's a thought. I'm gonna ponder on that a little bit. What that might.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
David and then Tesserath.
Back to the timeless timelessness thing, I just want to share a conundrum that I've been sitting with over the last couple weeks. And this is a big one, okay?
Good, right? 12 o'clock, that's perfect.
Time and space are a function of materialization and incarnation, okay? Everything we hear about people who have near-death experiences is that when you're not connected, when consciousness is not connected with body, there's not a sense of time. Yet, my whole sense is the realm that is not connected with time and space is not static. There's perpetual evolution, there's perpetual expansion. So how can there be evolution and change in a realm where time does not exist? I have no, my brain's working on that one these days. So I don't know.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
That's one that I've struggled with a long time now. But
really?
No,
Tell me, yes.
The way that I kind of think about it is like when we are in the spiritual realm, we're still not at the realm of oneness, which is truly beyond time. Yeah. So it's like when we're out of body, we can move through time more freely than we can when we're in body, but we're not truly fully out of time and into oneness as a spirit. Okay. That's the way that I've always, it makes sense in my head that that's why it works. But what I was going to say in relation to what Renee was talking about with like objects and time, I've never really thought about, like I prescribe consciousness to what most people call inanimate objects. Like I do talk to furniture and crystals and all that kind of stuff. But I never really thought of their consciousness as having kind of like a lifespan, kind of like the same way that we do. But when you guys were talking about it, it did make me think of, in like the last 100 years or so, when we're making stuff for like consumerism and stuff like that, we've actually started making stuff with the intention that it will break at a certain point, so they have to buy a new one. And we used to make stuff so that it would last forever. And I wonder how much influence our human consciousness, when we're in that process of creating something, actually will make it last longer on a vibratory level, you know? We can actually, because when we make something, I think we kind of harmonize with that object. We put some of our spirit into it, some of our energy into it. And if we have that intention of this will last a long time, maybe it'll help it hold together longer. Who knows? That's what I was thinking about.
One of the things I'd like to offer is, I like to think of it as everything has energy, everything. Whether it be the chair, whether it be us, it is an energetic level. And when you step outside of the skin school, when you step outside of your consciousness and you go into that other realm that we go to, there is, it's all energy. It's all energy. It doesn't matter. We could be an animal. We could be a chair. We could, however you want to look at it. That's how I like to look at it is when I walk in nature, if I'm, in the city or wherever, looking around, everything has energy. You can touch everything if you can touch it, and you can feel some sort of energy. And that's why I look at sacred sacred places. It doesn't have to have a banner above it saying it's a sacred place. It just has to be where you're standing or where you're at. Van Gogh, going to see Van Gogh. How much energy did you absorb? And from the sounds of it, you both absorb some phenomenal energy. Where does that come from?
Yeah, so we are the sacredness that goes to the spot. That's what sacred is. Us. We're the ones that are the sacred in the moment. We can have a sacred spot right here sitting in our house.
Yeah, and I see the value of traditional sacred spaces as there's an energy that's so present there within us that same energy within us resonates with it, and we find the sacredness within ourselves because it's resonating with what's out there.
Yeah, because sometimes we need that, because we're not aligned the way we need to be, and maybe we can find that through the energy of resonating with. That's the value of coming together as a group, is we get not just our own but everybody else's energies all coming together, and that's power.
Just what we're doing now, guys, is when you think about it, our group, what we're experiencing in this now moment, is a safe house from what's going on out there in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And thank you, Bill and Cher, for organizing this again.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
thank
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. And it's 12 o'clock. Renee?
Can I ask a question? I have one question about time and energy or vibration. Do you think that they are connected, or are they separate?
Well, there's an overall universal oneness. So yeah, I believe there's a connection.
Yeah.
Right?
I would.
Okay.
Stay out of your mind when you're thinking of it. Try not to dissect it too much, if there's a situation comes up, because that's where I know for myself personally, that's where I get confused and lost and ask too many questions. Is, I just, if I don't understand something, I try to step back and look at it like it's the first time I've seen it.
Yeah.
And, like a child looking at something for the first time. Children teach us so much to rethink things, but it's like, for me, I like to just stand back and say, I don't understand this. It's like some of the, what folks offer at this gathering here. I don't understand a lot of it sometimes, but when I don't try to dissect it or think about it, as the conversation continues on, I get a grasp of what is being said. And then I can take and put it into my thought process, I guess is what it's called. But I can look at it from there.
Yeah, nice. And that's all, like several of you have said today, there's some top thinking you've been chewing on for a while, or you've been trying to wrap your head around. That's really what this is all about. It's letting yourself have the fun of exploring the new ideas and just kind of playing with them. If we put too much stress on ourselves, I have to get this right away, then that's another form of stress that we don't need, right?
No labor.
No labor.
It's a journey of discovery.
Yes. Yes.
A gentle unfolding.
And I just sent you guys our spiritual practice, which is a labor is fun practice. And we don't really have time to go into it, but it makes, you'll figure it out. It's very easy. It's just a way of looking at, y'all like that little visual? Isn't that little guy?
I do.
I think he's so cute. But it's really just taking that as a reminder of what the acronym was, but then show up. Remember, like the laborers, they had to be there. We need to show up every day and be fully present and open to it as we practice the presence. We want to be up with our attitude. We don't want to fall into that cynicism, optimistic spirit, remember, and we want to keep it up. That's that patience. Regardless of the time, it is interesting. Richard commented in the box about how this is all talking about time. We have to be patient and trust the process. And it's a reminder to do that. So that is in there. I sent that through the chat box, so feel free to grab it. Okay, guys, thank you so much. This has been a fabulous discussion. What do you think? Have y'all enjoyed this?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, what great ideas have come up. So let's take a moment and just suck in that energy. Breathe it in, be fully present to this moment, realize we have lots of new ideas to think about, and we just see everybody enjoying the process of living abundantly beyond ordinary routines, doing awesome yogaing as you walk the spiritual path on positive, practical, prosperous feet. And so it is.
And thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Yes, for sure. Big hugs, everybody. Blessings. Enjoy the week, the rest of the week, a holiday weekend. And anybody who wants to stick around for lunch, we are bringing our lunch. So we look forward to seeing y'all there. Blessings.